Today we're continuing the story of the exchanged children by Rabbi Nachman, translated by Rabbi Avraham Greenbaum. Okay, so we are up to the point where the true son of the king, the one with the cattle, was now making use of his slave for all his needs. The slave was very unhappy over having sold himself as a slave because in a short time he was in need of bread. Now they had food. Because of one brief period, he would have to remain a slave forever. He sighed and groaned, "How have I come so low to be a slave?" The true son of the king, who was now his master, asked him, "What was your earlier greatness that you now sigh over having come to such a level?" The other man began to tell him that he'd been a king, but people spread rumors he'd been exchanged. For this man with the horse was none other than the king of whom we spoke earlier, who was really the son of the maid. He told him how he had been banished to other son, but later it entered his mind he had not done right, and he began to regret it. He was constantly beset by regrets over his evil crime against his friend. Once he dreamed that his remedy would be to throw off the kingship and go wherever his eyes would take him. This was now his sin to be rectified. However, he didn't want to do such a thing. Yet he was constantly disturbed by these dreams telling him to do it. He threw off the kingship, went away until eventually he came here. And now he would have to be a slave. The king's true son listened to all this in silence. "I'll think it over," he said to himself. "I'll see how to deal with him." That night the man of the forest came and gave him to eat and drink, and they spent the night there. Towards morning they heard the same sound of terribly loud laughter that made all the trees quake and tremble. The slave persuaded his master, the king's true son, to ask the man of the forest what this was. "What is the sound of this great laughter just before morning?" "This laughter," replied the man of the forest, is when the day laughs at the night, because the night asks the day, 'Why do I not have a name when you arrive?' Then the day laughs very loud and the day breaks, and that is the sound of this laughter." He found this very amazing, for it's really an amazing idea that the day laughs at night. In the morning, the man of the forest left again while they remained there eating and drinking. That night he came back, and they ate and drank and lay down to sleep. During the night they heard the cries of the animals, all the roaring and moaning and strange voices. All the animals and birds were crying. The lion roared, the lioness growled in a different voice, the birds chirped and chattered, and all of them sang and cried in different voices. At first the two men were very shaken by this. They were so afraid they paid no attention to the actual sounds. Later they listened carefully and heard it was the most amazing, awesome song. Hearing this song was the ultimate delight, making all other delights in the world pale into insignificance. They agreed that they should stay here, since here they would have food and drink and could enjoy the most amazing delight. The slave persuaded his master, the king's true son, to ask the man of the forest what it really was, and he did so. "This," replied the man of the forest, "is because the sun made a garment for the moon. All the animals of the forest said the moon greatly benefits them, since their main time of dominion is at night. Sometimes they need to enter inhabited areas, but they're unable to do so during the day. Since their main time of dominion is at night, the moon does them a great favor by shining to them. They therefore agreed to create a new melody in honor of the moon, and this is the melody you hear." Now they listened to the melody even more carefully, and they could hear that it was a most wonderful and profoundly pleasing melody. "Do you consider this to be such a novelty?" asked the man of the forest. "I possess an instrument which I received from my fathers, which they inherited from their fathers' fathers. This instrument is made of special leaves and colors, and as soon as you place it on any animal, beast, or bird, it immediately starts to sing this melody." Afterwards, the same laughter rang through the forest, and day broke. The man of the forest left, and the king's true son went in search for this instrument. He searched the whole room but didn't find it, and he was afraid to go any further. The king's true son, the master, and his slave, the maid's true son, were afraid to ask the man of the forest to take them to civilization, but afterwards he told them he would take them back to civilization. He brought them to a human habitation, took the instrument, gave it to the king's true son. "I'm giving you this instrument as a gift," as said the man of the forest. "As for this one," he had continued, indicating his slave, the maid's true son, who had now become king of the exchange, "as for him, you will know how to deal with him." "Where should we go?" asked the king's true son. He told them to look for a country called the Foolish Country with the Wise King. They asked him in which direction they should go to start asking how to find this country. The man of the forest pointed with his finger and said to the king's true son, "Go to that country, there you will attain your greatness." They left and went on their way. They had a strong desire to find some animal in which to test the instrument to see if it would make it sing. As yet they had not seen any kind of animal, but later they approached a settlement and found an animal. They placed the instrument on the animal, which began singing the same melody. They turned their journey until they reached the Foolish Country with the Wise King. The country had a wall around it, and the only way to enter was through one gate. They had to go around for many miles because they came to the gate before they came to the gate to enter the country. When they arrived, they were not allowed to enter. The king of the country had died, and the son had become king. The old king had left the world, saying, "Until now they called this the Foolish Country with the Wise King, but now they should call it the opposite, the Wise Land with the Foolish King. Whoever succeeds in changing the name back to the Foolish Land with the Wise King should be the king." Only someone who would undertake to achieve this was allowed to enter the country. This was why they did not want to admit him. They said to him, "Are you able to undertake this task and restore the country to its original name?" It seemed quite impossible for anyone to undertake such a task, and they could not enter. The slave tried to persuade his master to return home, but he was unwilling to go back, as the man of the forest had told him he should go to his country, and there he would achieve greatness. In the meantime, another man arrived on horseback, but he was refused entry for the same reason. The king's true son noticed the man's horse standing there, took the instrument and placed it on the horse, which started singing the most amazing melody. The owner of the horse pleaded with him to sell the instrument, but he was unwilling to do so. "What would you give me in exchange for such an amazing instrument?" he asked. "What will you be able to do with this instrument?" asked the owner of the horse. "The most you'll be able to do will be to play in some musical performance and earn a little money. I know something far superior to your instrument. I possess knowledge that I received from my father's fathers, through which it is possible to understand one thing from another. For example, if someone makes a casual remark, this tradition enables one to deduce something else from his remark. Until now, I've never revealed this knowledge to anyone in the world. But if you give me this instrument, I will teach you this tradition." The king's true son realized it would be truly wonderful to be able to understand one thing from another. He gave the instrument to the owner of the horse, who taught him how to understand one thing from another. Now that the king's true son knew how to understand one thing from another, he went to the gate in the country, deduced it must be possible to restore the country to its original name, because he already had the power to understand one thing from another. He understood that it was possible to do it, even though he didn't know how yet. He decided to tell them to let him enter, and he would undertake the task of restoring the country to its original name. What did he have to lose? He told the men who were barring entry to all except one who would undertake this task that they should let him in. They admitted him, informed the ministers there was a man who wanted to undertake to restore the country to its original name. They brought him to the ministers of the state, who said, "You must understand we too are far from being foolish, heaven forbid. However, the old king was such an outstanding sage that compared to him, we're all considered foolish. This is why the country used to be called the foolish country with the wise king. Afterwards, the king died and his son became king. He too is wise, but compared to us, he's not wise at all. Therefore, the country is now called the opposite, the wise country with the foolish king." The old king left a will stating that if someone can be found who is wise, that he can restore the kingdom to its original name, he should be made king. The old king instructed his son to give up the kingship in favor of such a man. Whoever is so outstandingly wise that everyone else is foolish compared to him will be the king, for he will be able to restore the kingdom to its original name, the foolish kingdom with the wise king, as they will all be foolish compared to him. You should therefore, we have 2 pages left to the story. You should therefore understand the mission on which you're embarking. The ministers of the state told the king's true son all this. The test is to see if you're sufficiently wise, they continued, is as follows. The old king left an amazing garden. All kinds of instruments made of different metals grow there. Some are silver and some are gold. The garden's the most awesome and amazing, but it's impossible to enter it. As soon as anyone goes inside, he immediately starts being chased. They chase him and he screams, but he has no idea what's going on and doesn't see who's chasing him. This way they pursue him till they drive him out of the garden, force him to flee. Let us see if you're sufficiently wise to be able to enter this garden. Do they beat the person who enters, he asked. The main thing, they replied, is that they chase him. He has no idea at all who is chasing him, and he flees in a terrible panic. This was what people who entered the garden had told them. The king's true son approached the garden and saw they had a wall around it. However, the gate was open and there was no guard, since obviously such a garden didn't need to be guarded. As he looked around, he saw a statue of a man standing beside the garden. Above the statue was a tablet stating that this man had been king hundreds of years earlier and that peace reigned in his time. Prior to this king, there had been wars as there were after him, but in the days of this king, there was peace. He pondered the matter. Having acquired the ability to understand one thing from another, he understood that everything depended on this man. On entering the garden, as soon as one began to be pursued, there was no need to flee at all. One only had to stand by the side of this man to be saved. Moreover, if they were to take this man and stand him inside the garden, everyone would then be able to enter peaceably in the garden. The king's true son could understand all this because he was ability to deduce one thing from another. He entered the garden. As soon as they began chasing him, he immediately went to stand by this man who stood outside next to the garden. This way, he was able to leave in peace without being harmed at all. Other people who entered the garden had fled in terrible panic as soon as they were chased. They were hurt and injured because of their very panic. But by going to stand by this man, he left in peace and tranquility. The ministers watched, amazed that he had left safely. The king's true son then gave instructions to take this man and place him inside the garden. They did so, and then all the ministers were able to enter the garden and leave safely without coming to any harm. Even so, said the ministers, despite the fact that we've seen you perform such a feat, it would not be proper to make you king because of only one feat. We will give you one more test. There's a throne that came from the old king. The throne is very high, but by its side stands all kinds of animals and birds carved out of wood. In front of the throne stands a bed, by the bed stands a table, and on the table stands a lamp. Extending from the throne in all directions are well-trodden, walled pathways, but no one has the least understanding of the connection between the throne and these pathways. After a certain distance along these pathways, by the side of one of them stands a golden lion. If anyone approaches the lion, it opens its mouth and devours him. The path then continues beyond where the lion stands. After a certain distance along the second pathway that extends from the throne in a different direction, there stands another kind of beast, a leopard made of a different metal, which is also impossible to approach. Afterwards, the path extends further. The same applies to all the other paths. They spread through the entire country, but nobody understands the purpose of the throne or the object standing by it or these parts. Your test will be if you can understand the purpose of this throne. As we finish the story, let's see what happened. So they showed him the throne, and he saw that it was very high indeed. He went up to the throne and examined it. He realized that this throne was made of the same wood as the instrument which the man of the forest gave him. He noticed that a certain rose was missing from the top of the throne. If the throne had this rose, it would have the same power as the instrument that had the power to play when placed on any animal, beast, or bird. He carried on looking and saw the rose missing from the top of the throne was lying on the ground. It would be necessary to lift it up and place it on top so that the throne would have the power of the instrument, for the previous king had devised everything with the utmost wisdom. So no one would be able to understand it until the arrival of the outstanding sage, who was able to change everything around and realign it properly. He understood it would be necessary to move the bed a little from its present position, and so too the table and the lamp. Likewise, the birds and animals needed to be moved around. A bird would have to be taken from one place and moved to another, and the same applied to the other birds, for the king had made everything with the utmost wisdom and subtlety, so no one would understand it until a sage came who could deduce how to order everything properly. The lion standing by the pathway extending from the throne had to be moved elsewhere, as did all the other animals. The king's true son gave instructions to arrange everything properly, to take the rose from below and to fix it up above, and to arrange everything in its proper order. In the proper order, then they all began singing the most amazing song, and all the different things performed their proper function. The king's true son became king. Then he said to the maid's true son, "Now I understand that I am the king's true son, and you are the maid's true son." This is from Sipurey maasiot. I think it's number 11. All the best. Bye-bye.